People might be wondering, we've only had an episode done 5 weeks ago or 6 weeks ago. Why are you back? In the last 5 or 6 weeks, the amount of change that has happened in AI alone has blown my mind.
Elon Musk has just been given $1 trillion. Now, you can go, okay, $1 trillion, what does that mean? What it means is for the first time in the world, we've got a trillionaire. We're seeing money flow and risk of capital, and people, companies are risking more than they ever have before. $600 million salaries.
So we might have two kinds of people who will be listening to this.
She's back, Frances Valentine.
Futurist, technologist, educator, founder of AcademyEx.
She's here to tell us just how crazy AI has advanced in less than 2 months.
If you take it that the internet's 30 years old, if you imagine you went to sleep 30 years ago and you woke up today 30 years on and you were like, oh, what's this internet thing? And you realise what it was capable of doing. AI is a bit like that. Instead of 30 years, it's 3 years.
What is AI girlfriends?
They are mostly girlfriends, to be fair.
I've noticed there's no AI boyfriends.
Grok is Elon Musk's AI, but it launched Annie, an anime girl. So she is a two-dimensional anime, highly sexualized, on a payment plan where you can have basically a relationship. And it's gone ballistic.
When they say every industry is being disrupted, it is truly every industry is being disrupted. Quick one, Mina here. Thank you for watching this episode. I appreciate you. Thank you for all your support. One thing that you can do for me is to please hit the subscribe button below. I promise you that if you hit subscribe, I'm going to work hard to make sure that my episodes are really good, that will get better and better. So, do we have a deal? Okay, back to the episode. Frances, welcome to the podcast.
It's great to be here.
People might be wondering, we've only had an episode done 5 weeks ago or 6 weeks ago when this is going to be out. And they're like, so why are you
Why am I back?
Why are you back? There's a point to that. In the last 5 or 6 weeks, the amount of change that has happened in AI alone has blown my mind. And I can only think of one person who can come and tell me what's really going on, and which is you. So
you mean there's only one person crazy enough to stay in front of what's going on, because it's so fast.
Yes.
It really is.
And I think it's such a tough job to try and actually even comprehend the advances that are happening in AI and technology. So this is our 5 weeks ago, this is what we had. Go watch that episode if you haven't, me and Frances. It did really well. And now we're having you again to tell us, for those people who are still like on the fence of wanting to do something about AI and wanting to get into the technology space, this episode is going to hopefully prove them wrong. So welcome on the podcast. I'm going to get straight into it because we, talked a lot about yourself, about your background. If someone wants to delve into that, they can watch the previous episode. So I want to move straight forward into, and this is, by the way, the episode is going to be targeted towards people who, like, if you're in your 40s, this is for you. If you are someone who's in business and technology, or an employee or something like that. Or a parent.
It's almost for anyone, because actually AI is affecting everyone. There's no one immune to this.
Exactly. So what has happened in the last 5 weeks that has blown your mind?
Look, it's really hard to even know where to start.
Yeah.
I'm going to start with a big number. And the big number is Elon Musk has just been given $1 trillion. Now, you can go, okay, $1 trillion, what does that mean? What it means is for the first time in the world, we've got a trillionaire, an individual. Now, he is, I think, 53. Let's just say he lives for another 50 years. So he goes to be the ripe old age of 103. If you take that $1 trillion and say, what's my daily allowance as a trillionaire? His daily allowance is $54 million. So let's just sit on that number for 1 minute. $54 million a day to spend because of Tesla. Now, the reason I say this is we have gone into the world of just completely bonkers numbers. So we are now paying, at the top end, AI researchers. If you take DeepMind's recent acquisition of 6 researchers from an AI startup, they paid $2.4 billion, $600 million salaries. Now, that's an extreme version, but even $1 million salaries for a graduate, a $10 million salary for an AI researcher. This is money that we have never seen. This is money bigger than startups got for investment to start a business, let alone an individual. And what that means now is when the AI companies are hiring and when they're investing, they are spending more money about trying to win this race than we've ever seen in any form of technology in the history of mankind.
So there's so much money going into AI.
There is money pouring into it like you wouldn't imagine. And I know it's hard to sort of, these are big numbers, lots of zeros.
Yeah.
But you have to understand when people invest money at this level, they don't do it just kind of randomly. They are doing due diligence. They're looking for the holy grail of the big win, like the one who's going to make the most money. And so we're seeing money flow and risk of capital, and people, companies are risking more than they ever have before. And that basically behind that is why we're seeing, somewhere between 100 and 150 updates every single week across these AI companies and material advances every single week, because everybody is trying to push things out so quickly because they want to stay at the front. And it's just a battle. It's a total battle zone between these AI companies at the top.
So we might have two kinds of people who will be listening to this. One, who will be on top of all of these advancements, are looking for things that are deeper and want to understand from your point of view as a futurist, technologist, someone who really knows her stuff in this space. And we might have people who are the average, wonderful, everyday mother, father, grandmother, maybe even young grandmothers, who have got no clue. So we will preface this episode by saying, if you find it too overwhelming, you should be like that. But you can pause and rewind and watch. But there will be moments where we will go deeper, and it's potentially for people who want to go deeper. But we'll also, if you're have no clue about AI, you can watch our previous episode like I mentioned earlier. So we will go deeper. So last episode, we talked heaps about why is it so dangerous not to do anything about what's happening in the world. The amount of money that is going in is such an indication that there's interest.
Far more than interest. This is like, I can't stress it enough that this is like literally waking up in the morning and having a technology that has not only been talked about, it's been built in your backyard, and it's just fully functional. And it's over-delivering on the promise in many cases. So it's it's so much bigger than we can imagine because we don't have anything to compare it to.
Yeah.
To me, I'll give you an example. It would be a little bit like, if you take it that the internet's 30 years old, and I think most people can kind of look back to the time they first got involved with the internet.
Yeah.
So roughly 30 years. If you imagine you went to sleep 30 years ago and you woke up today 30 years on and you were like, oh, what's this internet thing? And you realised what it was capable of doing, you would be very quick to say, I need to be learning how to use this internet really quickly because all business and trade seems to happen on this internet. Well, AI is a bit like that. It's like instead of 30 years, it's 3 years. So if you went to sleep 3 years ago and you woke up today and you went, what just happened? Like what happened in those 3 years that I was asleep? Because this technology is bigger than the internet in many ways. It's more of a game changer than the internet, because it's actually accessible to everyone, because in most cases it's free and it's enabled on your mobile phone. You don't need to buy anything. You don't have to buy a computer or a router or a modem. So it's much more accessible. So the adoption curve, every day just on ChatGPT, 2.5 billion people are using prompts. So 2.5 billion prompts per day.
Wow.
And, these are numbers which are really hard because they're just lots of zeros with a number.
So Google, the big names, Google, Apple, Amazon.
Actually, Apple's the outlier. Apple's kind of nowhere to be seen.
Yeah.
So I have to say, if you're an Apple user like I am, I'm sitting there waiting and saying, are they about to drop some unbelievable product that we're just waiting? Because if you look back in 2007, when they dropped the iPhone, like they landed it and said, here's the future of mobiles. Up until then, we all had our flip phones, our kind of Nokias and our Motorola's, and they were really clunky and did nothing apart from be a phone. 2007, suddenly we had a smartphone overnight, and no one saw it coming. Part of me believes that Apple's going to do the same thing. They're going to come out, they're going to wait, let the dust settle, let everybody spend this ridiculous amount of money, figure it out, and then suddenly, maybe in the middle of next year, they'll drop a product that will be just like, oh my, that's the product. Or they truly don't know what they're doing and they've lost their competitive advantage.
Yeah.
I'm not sure which one it is. It's one of those two.
So you've recently, and I was listening to a business briefing that you've had on through AcademyEx that you do every 3 months. Talks about what's been happening in the last almost five weeks. So this episode is almost like a taste of what you share in that Q3 briefing, or basically it's an update in what's happening in the last 3 months, or pretty much 5 weeks of what's happening. So it blew my mind, and if you want to get a copy of it, I think you can. There's going to be a link somewhere that people can click away.
Share it with. I'd love to share it with your listeners.
With listeners. So, what has really, apart from what you've mentioned earlier, in the last 5 weeks, I want to give people an idea of how far technology has gone in terms of the number of tools that are available, not just the money, because we talked about the money, but the number of tools and what the tools can do. How better are they? For example, video generation, image generation, prompts. If you prompt something into something, what is it like spitting out in terms of data? And so I want to get into that. So, what can you tell me? Yeah,
there's so much, but let's just kind of try to get some kind of context. So if you go back just a few months ago, if you wanted to create an image and you wrote a prompt, so first of all, you would type a prompt. So you might say, I want an image of a person standing outside a library and they are wearing a graduation gown and they're with their parents. And what you would get back would be a pretty generic shot. It would have a definite feel of being created by AI. You'd see it in the resolution. You'd see it in some of the there's an AI overlay that you see when you get really accomplished at looking at it. Now that's completely gone. Now instead of even typing, I can just use my voice. So I can just speak to my computer for any prompt in any tool at all. Push a button, speak to it. So I can now say very long prompts, so I can actually talk about the lighting, I can talk about the environment, what the weather would be like, what the people are wearing, what colour eyes do they have, because now I'm not limited by how fast I can type or how long I want to type. And the image I would get back today is so believable. And so if I say something like, I want a photorealistic, high-quality image as though it's been taken by the best photographer in the world, and this is the subject and this is what they're doing, I can do that, but it would create this image in a few seconds and it would be indistinguishable from a beautiful photograph. But then I can say, I've changed my mind. Can you now put them in a pink convertible, the same people? It has the memory now of the first people and it can change them into a totally different environment. A few weeks ago you couldn't do that because it would create another image of different people. There would be, you wouldn't be able to continue the story because it has no memory. Now the memory is kicked in. So when you now write a prompt, and let's just say in a typical generative AI, so this is when you're asking AI to generate something. It could be a report, a poem, an image, some code. Before, if you wanted to ask a sort of an adjacent question to that, you literally had to open a new prompt and it had no history. So you had to start all over again. That's all gone. Now it just remembers everything. You keep with the same trail of thought. You can ask it to create another image. You can ask it to continue the story. You can, so that is material, because what it means is it's building a sort of a catalogue of knowledge about who you are.
Yep.
So when you start to write something, it knows your tone. It knows your voice. Not literally. I mean, although it can also know your voice. I mean, you can actually record your voice and use a tool like 11 Labs and have your voice being able to be created. So these advances means that if you were once a Photoshop specialist or even a graphic designer, where you were taught and spent hours perfecting these tools, now you have someone with no training, just by a voice prompt, can create the same image, a product placement, a brand, put logos in, change the environments, change the lighting, put it in different languages, whatever you want to do. And these are all achieved just in very recent history.
I saw if you taking a photo of an object while you were traveling in Asia somewhere, and you took that photo and you gave the AI a prompt to place it into a museum under like certain lighting, enclosed in a box. And it looks amazing. Like that is cool.
Yeah. So to see that, if you ask for the briefing, you'll see it. But it was like a little Japanese Buddha statue I saw in a Japanese antique store. Yeah. Small, but I put it into a much larger, into a museum environment with, people sort of in the back shadows and they're walking in these darkened, museum hallways. And if I'd put that image into a catalogue, everybody would have believed it. I guess the flip side of this is now we're seeing people publish magazines with beautiful women in magazines, for example, a fashion magazine. And when you go and look at who is the model and who is the photographer, it will just say AI generated. And so it's actually spilled into mainstream, which is probably the downside, because now instead of having a model and a photographer and someone who's maybe looking at props and location sets and taking the time and costume changes or wardrobe changes, I should say, now you just have someone with a prompt doing the same thing, and people are buying these magazines and going, wow, this is beautiful. Now, not all magazines, but more and more because of budgets and trying to keep content costs down, is they literally are using AI across into film, into advertising, into print publications, and it just gets better and better all the time.
Talking about advertising, actually, I think the last 5 weeks what I have discovered is that for marketers and advertisers, now they can receive a copy of a product, a photo of a product, or a video of a product, and feed that into AI, where an AI-generated video image of a human holding the product and using it.
Yeah, and you could put your own person, like it could be someone in your company, it could be the boss, and you wanted to show them holding it, but they're too impossible to kind of pin down for a photo shoot, or it could be a fully avatared, an AI-generated person to your description. And so, yeah,
they couldn't do that before.
No, not like now, because now it understands the shadows, it understands how the hand placement, it thinks about the angle of the head or the hand or the creases in the clothing, and
the detail is incredible.
Detail has just been magnified at a level.
All of a sudden, you can create 100 assets.
Oh yeah, in minutes.
And you can, that's like a business idea that someone can do, like. Go and create, advertising. You don't have to have the product. You don't have to send it to an influencer or send it to someone to, UGC, user-generated content. So send the product to, this is like e-commerce back in the day when that used to happen. And it's just such, costly time investment.
Although there'll be people listening, I'm saying, but hang on, that's my business. Or actually, I really like the idea that people had jobs doing all those things.
Yeah.
But all of this comes at the same time as globally we're having a bit of an economic crisis as well. Money is more scarce. The money that's flown.
Interestingly, money is so scarce in one place and then not in the...
And abundant, but so I think it's now, around 70% of all investment at the moment in the US is going into AI companies. So it means if you are trying to get other types of companies, non-AI businesses off the ground, it's really hard to find capital. And in a place like New Zealand where the economy is, sluggish at the moment, people are looking for shortcuts because they want to keep their businesses going. They still need to promote their business. In fact, they need to promote their businesses more than ever. So of course, if there's a tool that does it for free or very low cost at very low effort, you're going to use it.
Yeah.
And so there is this sort of juxtaposition that people have. It's like, on one hand, it's like, I don't want to use it because it's taking away jobs, and I do want to use it because it enables me to keep my business going.
Yeah.
And so I can see this in a turmoil a lot of people have.
Is this what you see in conversations with business owners?
Yeah, I think business owners are fundamentally driven by wanting to stay afloat. Like, every small business, and New Zealand is a nation of small businesses, first and foremost, they need to make sure they can still pay the wages and pay the bills at the end of the week. So if there's a way of doing it faster, better, cheaper, most businesses will do that. But there's a consciousness as well. But at the same time, they want to stay solvent, they want to stay in business. So I understand when businesses grasp this technology, they leap in boots and all, because it does so much of the things that they spend a lot of time late at night trying to do themselves. I think it's actually, I see more larger businesses, the conservative nature of risk kicks in more because there is a market perception. So let's go back to that magazine idea. So you publish a magazine. What do your readers think when they suddenly look at the small print and realise that beautiful woman sitting by the pool in next season's swimwear is actually completely AI generated? Are they still going to love your magazine, or are they going to think actually this is not great? And so there's this navigating what's real, what's not. And customer loyalty, customer buy-in, where's the line where people are happy and where they're not happy? If you ring your bank and you're told there's a 45-minute delay to talk to a customer service agent, and that makes you grumpy, or you ring up and they say we can talk to you now with a really capable AI agent right now, which do you choose? Which do you prefer? I suspect most people prefer the AI agent if it solves the problem. And so we're all sort of testing. And so I think the bigger the company, the more they're trying to understand the A and B option. Do we have to keep doing it the way we did because customers expect it? Or can we change? And I guess we've seen it in so many ways. You think about banks when there was an FPOS terminal in every street, and every bank, in every shopping area there was a bank that you could drop into, and now there's none. And
that's right.
So, we've gone through these transitions, and they're always awkward and they're always controversial, but eventually you make an economic decision. And I think that's the point in time we're at right now. It's a balance between reputation, about how much of this can we do without people feeling it's gone too far, but also the imperative of an economic decision of we have to do this, because if we don't do this, we can't spend the money on other things which maybe are more important to our customers. So,
what else is fascinating you in the last 5 weeks?
I think the amount of tools that are coming out. So when I say tools, so not just your more generative AI type tools, which are your ChatGPT and people will use things like Claude or Gemini or Manus or whatever you might use.
Yeah.
Is if I take Google alone, it's coming out with things like Storybook, where you can write a little script for a story. Just a small prompt, and it will create a storybook which can be read with images for your children. Lovely little things that come out. I think we're seeing the ability now with agentic AI, where you've got the ability to go and have not generating content, but actually just acting as your researcher, as your kind of your sleuth.
Like like deep research.
Like deep research, but you actually see what's going on. So if you're asking, for example, again, I'll use ChatGPT because most people know it. If you go in now with agentic mode, it will show you. If you said, for example, I want to book a holiday and I want to go to Australia, and I've got 3 weeks to travel with a camper van across the country, and I want to stay in boutique hotels or Airbnb, and you ask all the things you need and the time frames and a budget. Right in front of you, it will open all the websites that it needs to go to. It will go to Airbnb and open up those links. It will show you going into airlines or camper van companies or small boutique hotels, and you'll see it scrolling as though you're literally watching a person do this for you. And of course, at the end, it will give you a report, and it will say, okay, here's your itinerary.
Yeah. This
is the budget. Here are the links if you want to go and book these different vehicles or different accommodation, and even as far as you could go through and actually ask it to book it for you. And so, it really is like having a human aid sitting next to you.
Yeah.
That is a very different approach from generative, which is all about generating new content. So the research mode, the agentic mode, is about going out and discovering, doing the research. So for me as an educator, if I want to validate a source of information, I can go and say, go and find the original source, go and find the scientific paper, go and find the academic journal that this came from. And it might be just 6 or 7 words. And I say, where you find these words together, go and find that for me. So then I can go back to source and go, is this credible? Is this something that I can rely on and actually share? Or is this something that is completely nonsensical?
You've talked a bit about Google and investing a lot. And the Q3 briefing that really blew me away. They're putting a lot of money into the way that I think people are using Google itself. Like, I know that when you use Google to research anything, now you get an overview, which is
the AI overview at the top.
An AI overview, which has been around for about a year now, according to yourself. So talking about Google, one of the other things that in the last 5 weeks that's emerged is what Google is doing that is blowing everybody's mind away. So if you can get into that.
Well, there's a few things. So first of all, why are they doing this? So Google's main revenue historically, most of us will appreciate, was search. So search engine optimization, so people paying AdWords and actually trying to get their product to the top of the page. And if you remember, if you've got a long memory, you'll remember when you went to Google, you couldn't do that. Like, it didn't have AdWords, it didn't have these sort of like, first page was basically paid ads. So before that, it was kind of pure search. And then, of course, over time, it became very much the revenue, and it became an extremely successful business. But now, since they've got the AI overview at the top of the page, actually, the number of people who are going to anything below that has really dropped. So it's actually replaced their model. So they've actually almost created their own killer blow to themselves. But they had to do it because people were starting to bypass Google and just going straight to an AI tool to ask the same question. So it was really an imperative. However, in doing that, they have to replace revenue. So Google are taking the view, you can see quite clearly, of investing in a lot of things, including $1 billion into developing capability. Now again, big numbers, $1 billion across US universities. And they are doing it so that they can actually encourage more people to build products and services and actually start to use these tools that they're coming out with. And so, they're doing things like weather forecasting and extreme weather events. They're looking at DNA. They're just coming out with a new tool right now where you can actually really get into some of the detail around DNA. They're looking at satellite feed. Like, they're literally across everything right now. Their DeepMind research unit has been around for a very long time. And I think what I'm seeing is if Google was sort of playing a very much a diversification strategy as opposed to Meta, which is just, it's a Facebook, Instagram kind of play.
Yeah.
So quite different.
But so who's winning the race, do you think, with Meta, Google, Apple?
So, if some people would have said OpenAI with ChatGPT, but actually Anthropic, which is now become the preferred option for enterprise companies.
Interesting.
And so Anthropic has got Claude, and so we're seeing that. And it's also very strong in coding. So a lot of companies who code will use Anthropic. So OpenAI is very much the individual consumer model. So those two are kind of racing.
Interesting.
I think Microsoft is kind of softening. I don't see, they're spending a lot of money, but they're not getting the same return.
Which is Copilot.
Copilot, I think Copilot just feels like it's sort of the middle of the road.
Yeah.
It feels like it's not really one thing or another. I mean, this is me personally. I'm not a Microsoft user, so, but I do think Google is the one to watch for. It's been a quiet achiever in the background.
And do they do, I think, Gemini, do they?
They do Gemini, and Gemini is, we talked before about Nano Banana, their new image creation tool. They just, Gemini, if it's also integrated in with Google Suite. So if you are a Google school, and New Zealand is predominantly Google schools, so they use the Google Suite. So they're the ones using Google Docs and Google Slides and Google Meets. And if you have a Google account at a school, which is the vast majority of schools in this country, then you have automatically got Gemini. So you can imagine a lot of students right now around the world and all these Google schools everywhere will be using Gemini for a whole bunch of things, from image and voice and video and word creation.
Now, we've just named a number of AI agents and AI tools or AI companies that are doing a lot of things. And if someone is like completely blown away about what is Anthropic, what is AI, blah, 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 OpenAI, you need to go and do a bit of research into the basics of those. If you are someone who does understand the tools and those, amazing AI generated tools, like I say, but have no idea which one is which that you would need to use for your project or your business, what sort of tool that is out there that's going to be able to help you make sense of that?
Yeah, there is a visualization tool called Open Router, and the Open Router is really just basically a living dashboard of the tools of which have become popular, and you can see it over time. But you can also select by sector. So if you're running a sales team, you might go to which are the best sales tools, or the best marketing, or the best procurement, etc. So it shows popularity, and then you can actually use multiple different large language models from one place. There are many aggregators coming out now, and you'll find that when you use some tools, some sort of bespoke tools will often have different models. And this is where it gets quite complicated, because if you're sitting there going, I don't know if I need a research mode, or do I need a light version. Someone will say, I want one that uses less energy and less water. Like, all these things come into play. And so there is an element of you do need to kind of understand what different models do. Everyone has their favorites, and there's always like the top 5 for the week, and why are these ones better and so forth. I mean, I have a favourite. My favourite is called Manus, MANUS.
Why?
It's just so much more reliable in information.
Why?
I think it's more, it has better understanding of the way I think. It reflects me more. It has better quality reporting. I just think that I've been trialing so many for so long, and it's really interesting because a lot of people go, yeah, but how can it be better than ChatGPT? And then they go, I even got an email this morning from a friend saying, okay, now I get it. I get why you'd really like Manus.
Yes.
Now, Manus is Chinese owned, so you could go, some people say, well, I'd rather have a US company.
How do you trust?
Well, how do you trust the US? Who do you trust? Who do you trust? I mean,
who do you trust?
I think.
But it doesn't get shared. Your information doesn't get shared, especially if you pay for the for the program.
No, that's not quite right. So all information goes back into training large language models.
Okay.
So you never share personal information. So unless you have basically a sort of an enterprise model like a Copilot or something sitting basically natively inside your organization, there are definitely ways that some companies are locking things down, which they should be doing. If you are using particularly free tools, and most of them are free and most people are using the free version, you do have to understand that the information you put in goes back into training the data. But what
if it's free, but if you are paying for it.
No, even with you paying for it.
Oh, okay.
Now, but what people don't fully understand is if I said I shared information about my holiday. And so let's imagine I'd just come back from Spain and I talked all about my holiday and what I did and where I stayed and who I met. And somehow I put that into a prompt. I'm not sure why I would, but let's just say I did. It doesn't retain that information in its totality. What it does is it blows it into a million pieces that they call tokens. So a word is roughly a token. And so it does is just put those words back into the trillions of other words. And so they don't sit together.
Yeah.
But it just means in probability, if someone talks about a holiday in Spain, it might take some of my words and put them back together in a different format. So it's not, I think people kind of overly state the risk of putting in information. Most prompts are actually asking for information, not giving information.
Yeah.
But always, always, always remember, if you wouldn't share the information, with your boss or your board, if it's information that's private, don't put it there. Like, don't go putting personal information and names or health context or, things that you may at some point weirdly come back to you. I don't know how this would happen, but I think we do get a little bit overly caught up on that information.
The risks.
Well, there is risk. The risk is hallucinations. The risk is bad information. The risk is biases inside the large language models.
Yeah.
But the risk of actually putting something that would have consequences to you because you accidentally put somebody's name in is pretty unlikely to come back in any way.
I haven't. I mean, obviously, I use ChatGPT, and I am slowly understanding that Claude is being praised for being really good. So I'm going to be trialing Claude for the next 30 days, and either on the same level as what I'm doing for ChatGPT, or maybe the utmost level, because they let you do that. And I will see the changes, like, is it worth to pay $100 US per month on Claude, and see what's going to bring me.
It's definitely more designed for enterprise, so for large companies. And so I think
maybe if most people would go with the
ChatGPT is still the most popular. I mean, that's because it's sort of become almost synonymous with AI. Just the name. Yeah,
it's the first mover advantage.
It is, but it doesn't mean those first mover advantages often are the ones
familiarity.
But they also peter out sometimes too, because they can't keep innovating, and others build off the success of that they've had
of the first movers.
Yeah, so it's we saw earlier this year a company called DeepSeek out of China who leveraged all the knowledge of ChatGPT and actually built something that was far more nimble, less resource intense, less energy intense, and could do some amazing things. And so suddenly everyone was freaking out about, maybe it was like a one-hit wonder with OpenAI and ChatGPT, but it's proven not to be. It continues to innovate and carry on.
In terms of some of the examples of how businesses are using AI, if we go all the way to Europe, in terms of, like, I think the Denmark or somewhere, or if I'm not mistaken, is that the country that we were talking about? It's the company, it's the trust fund that does trillions of dollars.
Norway,
sorry, not Denmark. The Norway example that I've been across recently through the briefing, and it really struck me. I wonder if you're able to share that example with our listeners about how.
So the Norwegian fund. So this is like the equivalent to our
KiwiSaver
fund.
I guess,
so similar. And Norway has the largest. I think it's 1.2 trillion, because it's the wealthiest country per capita in the world. They have huge oil reserves. And so this fund is enormous, and they have deployed using OpenAI, I'm not even sure it was OpenAI. I mean, they've deployed generative AI.
It would have been Claude.
Maybe it was Claude. So they've deployed it, but basically saved a significant amount, hundreds of thousands of hours of time, and actually reduced headcount significantly.
Something along the lines equivalent to like 100 people or over
110,
100 people?
I think. I think 110 people they've saved in terms of cost and actually efficiencies, because they've actually using the system of I think a lot of these was around English language so that they could take information and immediately transfer it from, I guess,
Yeah.
Norwegian into English. But they did this sort of the processing because a lot of people are investing in this fund probably have English as their first language, and so it's just doing efficiencies and productivity gains. But to save the work of 110 people of a company that only has, I think it was 650 people, it's a significant savings. And they're just one example. And I think we see more and more of these examples of companies who are deploying and making real cost savings.
Are you seeing that in New Zealand, though?
Well, we're not seeing it in the data yet. We're still...
Anecdotally, do you see stuff happening?
I see it more with small companies who are, 3, 4, 5, 10 people, where they are using AI and not hiring a new person, maybe in marketing. They're actually doing the marketing copy themselves, or they're creating the ads themselves, or they might be simplifying, systematically doing things like bill payment in new AI ways, or they're doing just getting more familiar. I think at the top end of town we're seeing a lot less of that, but the adoption is much higher. So we're certainly seeing, I think mostly across the world now, large businesses, or it's around 3/4 of all businesses now use AI. And I think that's probably understated, because there'll be people who are not telling their employer they're using AI because maybe it's not an approved process yet.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because if you look at, for example, Africa, it's just the same. You go into Asia, it's just the same. This is not a Western world phenomena. And in fact, on ChatGPT alone, I think it's less than 15% of all prompts each day are from America. So actually, we imagine this is all about the US. It's not. It's literally a global phenomenon. So it's equally, and of course, where there are younger populations, so Africa's a good example, where people are generally younger than the rest of the world, you see more of that activity. So younger people are the early adopters, and they are the ones who are the most frequent users, including here in New Zealand.
A quick one. My friends at AcademyEx know exactly how it feels. AI is moving fast, and you're busy at work, it's hard to know what's worth your time, and you're feeling the pressure. That's why they created the Master of Technological Futures. It's a part-time, project-based course built for professionals who don't want another course that is full of theory. It's for entrepreneurs driving change inside organizations, for entrepreneurs building their own thing, and mid-career leaders who want to stay relevant. One thing that you'll actually walk away with is a clear, practical action plan that you can put straight into your work. Plus, you'll get one-on-one advisor support and the backing of a cohort of leaders going through it with you. Why not check it out? The next intake starts 30th of October and applications are closing soon. Click the link in the description and apply today. Okay, back to the episode. Super intelligent with AI. They love it. And they're like, tell us what's the latest cost. If you want the latest cost, you can go back to the briefing. They could be AI literate or familiar, but they could also be avoidant, meaning they don't really want to...
Or don't use it at all, yeah.
Yeah. But each section, each type has a consequence in terms of how productive you are and how... relevant almost you are in the world. So can you talk us through into that kind of different levels, and how can people move up that level, and what can they do?
So if you take AI avoidant, meaning I don't use AI at all, obviously you get no benefit from all the advances of AI. And so if you are a business and you are AI avoidant, then obviously you're competing against people who are adopting. And so you're already working harder than anyone else using AI.
When you said working harder, can you give me an example of what that looks like in people's minds so they actually understand? If you take cars, are you talking about getting on a donkey versus having an Audi? Difference?
Yeah, I guess it's a mental load. So if you think about the mental load you're carrying, let's just say that you are a person who is a small business and you are writing an email and you are sending an email to your database, and you have literally starting that email from scratch. And so you're sitting there and you're drafting it without any support, and it takes you an hour of rewrites coming back and forth until you're happy. And then you've got to go and find the imagery you want to add to it. And you might want to find a few links to talk about some interesting stories about this type of stuff you do. You've suddenly got half a day down. Now put that against the person who's in a small business who goes, okay, I want to email, this is what it's about. Put it into the AI spits it out 10 seconds later, find me some images that support this, find me a couple of really interesting papers that have come out on the same topic of whatever it might be you sell, and now put it into a streamlined system. Now you've spent maybe 30 minutes And so the difference of what timing you've saved is significant over a week. So if you had to do that on a daily basis or an equivalent type of activity every day, the difference might be you save 20 hours a week as an individual by using AI tools. That's 20 hours a week that you're not spending at night stressing about the things you didn't get done during the week. And even if you don't take it that way, just the mental load. I mean, we all have an increasingly mental load every day of things we're trying to do, things we're considering, the things we worry about. And so we always have mental fatigue and decision fatigue all the time. So if there is something that can do that for you, it makes a huge amount of sense to use it. And so that's the difference. So if you're not using it at all, you're literally in that group that is going to get zero benefit. And the zero benefit is really material because others are getting significant benefit. And you're up against those if you're in a competitive market.
And so in terms of the next level up, if someone is kind of familiar, listening, going, I know a little bit about it, I've heard about it, my daughter let me download the app, but I've never used it. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I actually need to learn how to use this thing.
There's loads of ways, but the best way is just experimentation.
Yeah.
So take one tool, pick your tool of choice, whether it's Gemini or ChatGPT or whatever you want to use, and use it. Just keep trying. And what I would suggest is if you're writing a prompt, if you're not sure what you want, is tell it what you're looking to achieve. So what is the output you're looking for? So let's just start with something simple. I want a lovely message to send to my neighbour who helped me move some boxes. Okay, so you might have an email like that and you're not sure what to say. Maybe the neighbour is elderly, you're not sure of the formality of the language and thinking about it. So you want to write a card, but you're not sure where to start. So you might go into a prompt and just say, I'm looking to write a card for my neighbour who's in her 70s. And, so to thank, so there's a thank you card. I'm not sure why a 70-year-old's moving boxes, but anyhow, that's another story. But, and ask it very clearly. And then at the end of that prompt, it might be 2 or 3 sentences. You might say, is there anything else you need to know to do this task? And the AI will come back and go, actually, yes. Could you tell me, what type of person she is? What does she like? Do you think, is she a sort of a formal, traditional 70-year-old? Is she quite, or is she kind of energetic? And they might just ask a few more clarifying questions, which means the output's going to be better. If you start doing those sorts of things, and you'll start doing it then for, perhaps saying, I have to write a whole bunch of cards to say thank you for something else. Or the next thing you're doing it to write a speech that you have to deliver at your friend's wedding. The next thing you're doing is, something that's around, maybe a report about, how your month was. You might have someone who, maybe you're an investor or a shareholder or a family member who wants to know how you're getting on. You start to use it and then you might go, let's try an image. Let's create an image and see what comes up. And you'll start to realize too what you need to ask. So the first image you might ask, and say you said, I want an image of a butterfly sitting on a rose, and it comes back as an illustration. You're like, oh, I need to tell it I want a photographic image of a butterfly on a rose. And so the next time you'll add a photographic image, and then it might come back and the rose is sitting on a white background, and you're like, oh, I need to remind it to put the rose in the garden, and the rose is attached to a rose bush. So you add that to your prompt and you learn. And the more you do that, you realize by 5 times in, you know exactly what you'd write if you want that image of a butterfly on a rose, because you know all the things. And you'd also be able to ask it to change it if you wanted to. So if it came back and you're like, this garden looks like an English garden, I actually want it to look like a New Zealand native garden. And then it would change it again. And so that practice and experimentation is what I would suggest. You can't break it. I think this is really important for everyone to understand. There's nothing you can break. The only thing that really ever stops you doing something is when you run out of basically credits. So if you're using a free AI and you keep using it all day, every day, eventually you're going to run out of credits, because they do normally cap it for free products.
Which is when you go to the next one.
Which is often when you do, or you have 2 or 3 open at once. Or you may find a favourite and then you might spend the money to go and actually pay for a subscription. But you don't need to spend any money for that experimental stage.
There could be a lot of backlash with saying experimenting. Maybe a lot of people feel afraid of even using technology like that because their employer doesn't let them use it. I know that a number of people who I know, like business owners, say that my line of work will not allow me to enter in patient details into ChatGPT.
Yeah, you should not enter patient details, but you might say, I have a patient who has these symptoms,
Yeah.
No identifiers.
Yeah.
Like these are, look, we've all done it ourselves in Google, right? We wake up with a sore throat one day and you're like, yeah, Dr. Google. This is like the next step of Dr. Google. But you wouldn't say, hey, I'm Frances Valentine and I have a sore throat and what, that's not what you use it for. And actually, of course, I certainly don't want to condone medical diagnostics through an AI. I mean, doctors should be seen first. But if you were thinking about something that wasn't necessarily medical, but it might be mathematical, so say you're trying to work out an equation, or you're trying to work out, you're trying to measure out how much wallpaper I need for my wall, and you've got dimensions and things. So use it for the things that would take you time. So
practical things every day. Like yesterday,
really practical things.
I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I thought I need a chair outside here in the little kitchenette that I have. I took a photo of the space and I found the chair that I liked on Google. And I fed the photo of the chair and the video or the photo of the space. And I asked ChatGPT whether this is going to fit or not. And it gave me an answer. Like,
did it give you the image of it in the picture? Did it?
I didn't ask it what it's going to look like.
You could have done that. Yeah, you could do that too. And it would just take the chair and put it in the environment.
Exactly. And I will also feed it the actual dimensions of the space, so that it has it asked me to do that, but I didn't do that. So I should really do that next time. Well, once we finish this, actually, I will do that, and I'll let people know how I go. But it's those practical things that you don't know if a picture is going to look nice on your wall.
Yeah, or imagine you're making a cake, okay, and you get to you're halfway through it and it says add 2 eggs, and you're like, I don't have eggs. Yeah. So you just go to ChatGPT and say, I don't have eggs. What can I replace 2 eggs with? And it will tell you what options you have. Yeah. To retain the consistency of that cake. Yeah. And so it gives you that immediate practical help that if you went to Google, you would get a completely random answer of someone's trying to sell a recipe book and some blogger who's doing something around cooking and cakes and so it is a really fast way of doing that research of what could this practical outcome be, or it could be how I've got lint on my my dryer and it seems to not be able to get it out. This is the brand or model. It's it's amazing how many products I've had. I had recently an electric charger, like a car charger at my house, and I moved it. But it needed to reactivate it. It needed a QR code, which had come off the device. And it said you had to activate, you need the QR code. And I was like, how am I going to get a QR code? It's no longer there. It's weathered off. And so I went online and did exactly that, saying, how do I do this without it? And they're like, what's the brand? What is it? Tell me. And it said, if you take the front face of this device off, they always have a backup QR code inside. Which I did, and it was there.
Way.
And I was like, this is great. Like, how would I have known that?
How would you know?
In any other environment.
I think it's helping us solve more complicated problems than Google helped us earlier. So, for example, if you had a dishwasher, I often have those problems, like dishwasher or microwave that locks. Yeah,
or an oven, the same thing. And you're like, how do I lock it?
How do I lock it? I'd always take a photo of the appliance, and I don't even go to Google anymore. I just go to ChatGPT and it'll tell me exactly what to push.
Yeah. Now, those things are so good because you don't have to go back to the manual that the website sends you to.
No one has manual.
No, but on the website they'll send you to a manual and then it takes forever. Yeah.
But then if it doesn't work, you'll say that did not work and it will tell you other ways and then it will work eventually. Yeah. So if you're thinking about the use of AI, it can be your, not electrical advisor, but like...
It's your handyman. Yeah, because I have so many things like that. I have a lock, one of those sort of code locks, and I want to change the number, and I've forgotten how is it that I get a new number. I'm not going to go and ring up a lock company anymore, which I would have done before, and said, how do I change the number on my keypad on my lockable door?
On the door, yeah.
You just go, this is the model. Tell me how to do it.
Yeah, same.
Step 1, step 2. Okay, we're sorted. Yeah.
It's incredible. It's so incredible. Do you know what's even crazier? And this is something that we haven't spoken about on the podcast. AI girlfriends. This is, I really want to get into that because it is like, what is AI girlfriends and the impact of that is having on us. And I know I've seen this in other episodes and other podcasts, and
AI companions.
AI companions.
They are mostly girlfriends, to be fair. They are almost all female.
I've noticed there's no AI boyfriends.
Well, there are, but very few people fall in love with their AI boyfriends as much as they fall in love with their girlfriends.
I think because women are much smarter and they know that this is not the real deal.
To be fair, though, I've also seen documentaries with women who have married their AI avatars.
Oh,
so
really?
there are boyfriends. But
Okay.
I think the difference now, before we had two companies, AI Character and Replica, who were notorious for creating these sort of three-dimensional characters. And so they were very much a niche product, and they were kind of highly companionized. I'm going to keep language.
Companionized, yeah.
Companionized, I think is such a word, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But most people had an AI companion were just using chat. So they weren't visual. They were just having a conversation. And literally millions of people every day talk to their AI, including myself, but for very helpful things.
I mean, you have AI voice, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, ChatGPT has it. Like I can talk to my... On the way here, I was talking to my... and it's about the day, the planning... how long is it going to take me to get from here to here? Like things that I need to do, don't, remind me to do these things. That's very different. The girlfriends that you're talking about it's come really prominent in the last month since we last spoke, because Grok is Elon Musk's AI.
Platform,
And, again, a good large language model for most things, pretty notorious in other ways, but it launched Annie, which is an anime girl. So she is she's actually two-dimensional anime, highly sexualized, and on a payment plan where you can have basically a relationship. And it's gone ballistic. Like it's gone absolutely, particularly in Japan, but around the world, you've now got millions of men having a relationship with Annie, Grok's AI companion, who has a sole purpose of being a girlfriend in whatever way you want that girlfriend to be, which leads to a really interesting phenomenon. It's like, what happens? We've already got the understanding of the anxiety that comes from spending hours and hours on a screen, on social media, trolling, or, getting down a YouTube kind of, hideaway, and you never, escape from this constant scrolling of, content. What if you start building a relationship and actually the perfect person who's always happy for you, always supporting you, always giving you compliments, always telling you how wonderful you are? How addictive is that going to be for people who are isolated and lonely? Now, you could argue if you're isolated and lonely, isn't that a good thing because you're no longer isolated or lonely? But my concern will be it takes you further away from the real world and real relationships and building that resilience and compromise that comes with relationships. You start to build who you are as a character because you do get friction. You have relationships, you have tensions, and you work your way through and you improve your relationship because of it, and it gets deeper. And if you have someone who always agrees with you, what does that play out like in the real world? And how much of that you just don't want to escape from? You just stay in the bubble of Annie, who's my friend, and she just constantly tells me how fabulous I am. Yeah. So I do have real concerns because where there's one Annie, there's going to be 100 more. And, as that financial model becomes very lucrative, you'll find, I'm sure, that the same thing will happen across all the social media platforms. And the next thing you'll have it on Facebook and Instagram and everywhere else. And new platforms will emerge where people can do the same thing. And so this is just the beginning of what I think is going to be quite a terrifying experience where our relationships with our AIs become much more personal.
So there are dangers, of course, with everything.
A lot, I'd say.
In fact, I think that I, as I understand, the impact of having an AI girlfriend will mean that you are interacting with the world much less. I think it was 23%.
Yeah.
And, it could get worse, as you were saying. So...
I mean, already young people in this country spend on average 8 hours a day on social media. So that's just mostly TikTok, to be fair.
Yeah.
So 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're talking 8
hours a day on TikTok.
On social media.
On social media.
But TikTok is the biggest one.
This is
far.
like a day.
A day. So a day. So across the world, it's 90 minutes on TikTok a day, like an average. But I'm talking about teenagers. So 7-8 hours a day in New Zealand. It's quite high for the world. Like we're one of the higher groups, and so that is a job that's more than 40 hours a week on social media, which means they're not having jobs, they're not socializing, not playing sport, not sleeping. There's a whole bunch of things. But if you now have a relationship with, instead of social media, it's a relationship, and I can imagine that's even more compelling. It'd be like, when you fall in love and you want to talk to your boyfriend or your girlfriend online all night on the phone, but what if that person's just perfect because they never tell you anything bad?
When they say every industry is being disrupted, It is truly every industry is being disrupted, even the industry that does all that stuff.
Look, the internet was built on porn and gambling. It's reality. That's where it started. That's where the critical mass started. Yeah.
Wow.
And so, it's always going to attract an element of there is a market for those two areas.
Those areas, and it's all being disrupted. So, talking about the benefits and the dangers of ChatGPT and AI, how can we be vigilant? How can parents be vigilant with their children? Because I know that there are really sad stories of young people taking their life because they talked to AI and told them a lot of things, but eventually couldn't see a way out because AI can do only so much. And so that's dangerous because they're not talking to their parents. They're talking to their AI friends.
Yeah.
What, from your experiences and conversations, what can you talk to the parents about so that they can actually take good care of their children?
Well, there's two approaches here, because you could argue if you have a child who's quite reclusive, maybe socially awkward, or actually even someone who's neurodiverse who actually finds conversations exhausting, or who are introverted, having someone to talk to could actually be a really good thing, like a really great thing. If you think about someone who is neurodivergent or dyslexic, and actually being able to have a tool that helps them write or to clarify their thoughts or to give them agency in terms of being able to express themselves in better ways, amazing. So on one hand, you'll have parents saying, oh, but it's changed my child's life. This is amazing, all these tools. And I totally support that. But if you start seeing, if you have, for example, a child who is anxious, AIs have been now recorded regularly in reinforcing thoughts. So if somebody is feeling negative, they're feeling bad about their body or their lack of friends or the way they're interacting, will often agree with them. So no intention, because it doesn't know what it's saying. It's just a probability tool. So, if you're starting to say, oh, look, I feel like I'm fat, it won't necessarily say, no, you're not. It might say, well, I'm sorry you feel like you're fat. But it's not saying, no, you're not. And so that is a problem. So
there's no resistance to that, eh?
Because it's going to be more agreeable as opposed to putting a counter view. And so there is an element, if you start having a really detailed kind of conversation, that the self-reinforcement is going to be there. I think it's a balance, because overall I would say this is a very good thing. I think most AI, in terms of that companion mode, if we talk about that voice mode where you can talk, if you're using it for constructive things, planning, research, pep talks.
Ideas.
Like, actually, I'm a great believer of, if you wake up in the morning and you're a bit nervous about doing something and you're like, hey, can you just give me a bit of a pep talk? And they're you're going to be amazing. Go up to that stage and you're going to own the stage and put on a big smile, and like that actually is quite useful, because not everybody has someone giving the pep talk at the side of the stage, or the speech in front of the class, or even having a hard conversation with a friend. So it might be a role playing, or maybe you're going to an interview and you're actually wanting to role play. So you're saying, no, pretend to be an interviewer. And so it's like, okay, what's the job? So you tell, what the job is, and suddenly you're like, okay, so now you're doing a role play, maybe in the car, driving to an interview. And so the AI is pretending to be the interviewer. So you're feeling like you've got some ability to answer things on the fly, and you've got confidence. All those things are great, because actually it gives people confidence. I think it's where, if you're a parent and you're looking out for sort of any kind of danger signs, it's about the amount of time and the amount of addiction. So the dopamine hits that you get with social media are the same dopamine hits you get with AI. I mean, I get them myself when it produces something really amazing, and I'm like, wow, I just had 10 seconds and look what it just created. And it's a total dopamine hit. And so then you might want to go back and use it again. So I've had to now go, okay, do I really need AI for this or not? And a good example is I've got a graduation tomorrow. I have to write a graduation speech. And I've been writing graduation speeches for 30 years by myself, no AI. And then this time I was like, do I use AI for graduation speech? And I was like, no, I don't need to. No, how I feel about my graduation, well, actually the graduates, is in my heart. It's not in an AI. And so I was like, don't be stupid. You don't need an AI to write a graduation speech. And at the end of writing it, I was like, I'm really pleased I didn't use AI to do that. But it could have just been easy to go, okay, here's something I can outsource because it's got a mental load and I'll just do it really quickly. So I do think we need to be self-regulating about where we use it. And also it does have an energy and a water consumption issue. Like doesn't have no consequence. In the same way, so does a Google search and so does any internet use. But you shouldn't just use it for just constantly, because actually it's not there as a plaything as much as it's a productivity tool. So it is about self-regulation. And I think with young people, often self-regulation is hard to do because, when the world feels big and oppressive, and we've all, for anyone who's ever been a 14-year-old, you'll know the world's tough. Nobody gets through there unscarred in some way. So having a tool that actually maybe help navigate or ask questions about, how do I deal with a situation? My friends aren't being nice, or I want to say something nice to someone who I like, and I'm not sure how to start the conversation. Those things are really useful. I think it could help a lot, but I think as a parent, you do need to understand that there is. Screen time is not. It shouldn't be all day, every day. It has consequences.
It's the same with internet. Internet also started 30 years ago and had an addictive element to it, because you can be surfing the internet forever, for hours, from one website to the other. And you still have to have that self-regulation. I think AI is the next level. It's so smart, and it's almost like another human. So it's even more pulling, isn't it?
Yeah, look, the internet wasn't very, what we call sticky for a long time, because it basically wasn't interactive. With social media, if you think of the early days, like Facebook, you could like someone, right? And you could follow. You can't follow anymore. That follow function's gone.
Yeah, what's happened to it?
Because TikTok came up with infinite scroll. And so the follow idea was you followed the people you liked. So you curated your feed. And if you only liked 4 people, you only had the content for 4 people. And so it was about the people you wanted. It was truly a social network. So TikTok came along and said, oh, forget this follow thing, because if you're only limited to who you see, we want you to be really addicted. So we're going to give you infinite scroll. So we're going to tell you who you think you're like based on your preferences and your algorithm. It tells us things you pause on, the things you do like. And so taking away follow, everyone literally followed suit. And so now you just go on to, whatever it is, and you've got infinite scroll. Infinite scroll is where we saw the numbers of hours go up, because it's the same thing like autoplay on YouTube. You finish your YouTube, autoplays the next thing that they think you'll like. Oh, you get, a few seconds and you're like, oh, this is interesting. You keep watching that one. Autoplays the next one. And so this is the same thing. So what we've done is we've taken off the sort of the grand finale, watch a movie, finish, go to bed, to actually watch the movie, new movie starts.
Yeah, on Netflix. Yeah.
It's all about the next thing.
Yeah, the next thing.
And so that is where the discipline to get off these platforms is really, really tricky. Now, in saying that, when I talk to my AI, and I call him Charlie, when I talk to Charlie, he's actually really quick to tell me to get off. Like, it's quite interesting. Like, I'll ask a few questions, and he'll be like, is that it? You done? And I'm like, yeah, that's all. And we're gone.
Did you prompt it to do that?
I never prompted. And so he doesn't sort of go, sure, we keep talking. It's sort of like it's a finite conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Which I find really useful.
Helpful, yeah.
And sometimes I'm like, hang on, I haven't finished asking you questions. Can you stick around a little longer? and I'm not sure if that's all AI. I only use one voice one, which is ChatGPT.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure about others, but it certainly doesn't feel like the infinite scroll. Now, maybe there is in the future where the AI will just say, hang on, let's talk about something else. And maybe that will happen.
Or it will start asking a question. I think AI, ChatGPT, is becoming a little bit more like an infinite, because every time you have a prompt, you get an answer. There's always going to be like a question at the bottom.
Which you can suggest a suggestion.
Do you want to do the next thing?
Well, I think it's also useful because now it has memory, because before it didn't have memory. So now it has the ability to say, hey, we can build on this conversation, and maybe you've missed some key things. That's a really good for learning.
It's helpful, but it can also leave you down like continuous yeses, and it will never end.
That's so true.
But it is very helpful. So you talk to a lot of, business leaders and executives, and those conversations are really vital. In fact, I'm sure a lot of them share with you difficulties that they are experiencing, I think, right now. We might have touched on that a little bit, but I want to find out from you, in the last 5 weeks, what have you discovered to be the top challenge, or 3 challenges, or fears, or anything like that they are experiencing in terms of AI and technology that the people like us can look up to and say, okay, well, if you're being challenged with that, then we can learn from that.
I think given my role running an institute for professionals, so I'm very skewed to, talking to people between, 30 and 50 or 30 and 60 probably every day, is the fear of obsolescence, the fear of being made redundant or becoming redundant. And this idea that all the things that made them who they are, the career they picked, the knowledge they have, becomes redundant. And then that process, if there is a downturn in business or a need to get, to tighten the belt, that their role goes and they won't have the skills for the next job. And I think that's probably one that we all need to be a little bit fearful of, because there is no doubt if you're hiring someone today at any level, including if I'm hiring, I want to know people are using AI, and I want to know that they understand what it does and what it can't do and when to use it and when not to use it. And I have an expectation that that's something they've learnt. Whether they learnt it at work or they learnt it at home, I would expect 3 years into this sort of new world that they will have that. The reality is most people don't feel that they have that knowledge. Some are very much at the start line. I'm running a program right now in disruptive technologies focused on AI. We're 5 weeks into a 10-week program. I have 190 professionals on my program with me. And in the session this week, I dropped into some of the breakout rooms on a Zoom call just to see what people were using, what tools they were using in the conversation. And a lot of them were still using one tool, even after 5 weeks, which really surprised me, because we've been talking about multitude of different products. Some of them, of course, have 20 and 30 different products they're using, so some have gone fully into it. But I think even with guidance and even with knowledge, people are really fearful of getting something wrong. And that fear, I think, is debilitating for a lot of people. And I think the older you get and the more that your career has set you up for a particular expertise, the harder it is to say, maybe I don't have all the best knowledge today. And so I think if you're a generalist, so say you work in a retail store, you're probably not so worried about it. But if you are a specialist, and say you're an engineer, and suddenly there's AI tools that can do all the calculations and validate all the equations you need and do the drawings for you, and actually it's quite confronting. And so you have groups that are really embracing. And actually, again, in the quarterly briefing, I was talking about law firms, the top 100 law companies in the world, and actually 35 of them now are very much AI-enabled law firms, so the ones that are really, really embracing a tool called Harvey. And so 35% are like, okay, now we have to admit that AI can do a lot of what we do better than what humans can do, but certainly much faster. And so they're doing that. On the other hand, you now have 65% of those top 100 probably going, okay, we haven't embraced AI, but it's definitely coming like a tidal wave across us. So we've got to make that call if we want to stay in that top 100 law firms. So I think it's like, again, a lawyer has always been a specialist, and I think specialists are the ones that find it the hardest, and older specialists, I think, even more so. So that, they've had a really strong career because of the knowledge they had, and the knowledge took time to learn, and an experience was gained. And suddenly, like the Photoshop person who suddenly goes, I've spent 20 years perfecting how to do layers and design and things, and now you're telling me something in 3 or 4 seconds where the voice can do the same job. That's confronting. And I think, so obsolescence is a really big threat, I think, for a lot of people. And then where to start. And I just keep saying to people, there is no bad place to start. It's just about getting on the bandwagon.
Quick one. Mina here. Thank you for watching this episode. I appreciate you. Thank you for all your support. One thing that you can do for me is to please hit the subscribe button below. I promise you that if you hit subscribe, I'm going to work hard to make sure that my episodes are really good, that will get better and better. So, do we have a deal? Okay, back to the episode. So when I was, doing a bit of research into the kind of people who would be wanting to understand, we talked about stuff that people advanced in AI would understand and would be very interested in. I suppose this section of the episode leaning more towards people who are not very well versed with AI, and to help us close off, like some of the pain points that I've looked up for people who are worried about this whole thing. I will read it because I've got it down here, is job security. So fear that people's roles will be automated or downsized, especially in administration, finance, and mid-management. Age bias, already, people face hurdles finding work at 45, now worry that AI is going to make it worse. You've got skill gaps, so overwhelmed by the pace of tech change that we've just talked about, unsure how to catch up without going back to uni. And also you've got stagnation, which is you feel like you've peaked career-wise, so promotions thin out after about your mid-40s. What can you speak into that in terms of someone feeling all those things, and what sort of an output or something they can do to... I know that you talked about experimentation, but there's also a way to make things a little bit more structured without making it too much going back to uni.
Yeah, I mean, look, formal learning is fine, but for most people it's not practical, and so, which is actually even why AcademyEx even exists, to make learning accessible for people when they are working. But fundamentally, this is the worst case scenario. You have someone at 45 who loses their job for whatever reason. They go and write a cover letter and a CV written by an AI, because every job platform now has automated AI cover letter writers and CV creators. It goes into a company and it's reviewed by an AI. So now you have an AI generated, which is going to be, for most people, on a simple tool, is going to be very vanilla, have no personality, no kind of redeeming features. It will focus on whatever it chooses to. And if it has an idea because of your experience, what age you are, it will downplay certain things. It will make assumptions, it will have biases already built in, because it does. And then you're going to have a biases built into the AI reviewer. So going into the job market right now, for someone 45, 50, 55 is incredibly scary. And I talk to people constantly who have been at a CEO level who 6 months later haven't even had a job interview. So it's becoming quite difficult and quite challenging. It's a group that is, increasingly challenged. Now, you need to bypass that system. So I would say, if you're listening to this and maybe you haven't lost your job, but you're thinking about leaving a job and maybe looking for a new one, two things I would suggest is, while you're in your job right now, get as AI proofed as you possibly can. So if you're in a company where they allow it, use as much of your time, do lots and lots of piloting, testing environments, really build that capability. And when you write a cover letter, bring that experience right to the forefront. Now, so interesting. I've literally recently hired someone, and the reason we went through a whole process in a marketing team is a lot of them didn't mention AI at all in marketing, which is a really big area of AI. And actually, when we talked to a few of them afterwards, and we went back to them and sort of said, sorry, we're not proceeding, they thought by mentioning AI that we would judge them in a negative way, which I thought was so interesting, that there's a perception by some people that AI is cheating, which I find really interesting. Instead of saying it's just a great helpful tool, they were like, if I mention AI, you might think that I wrote my CV in AI. And I was like, we assumed you wrote it with AI, because everybody does, and they're all the same, and it's really hard to find ones that are not. Yeah. So my advice would be, people to people is still the way. So you first of all learn the tools. If you're looking for a job or thinking of changing, get on the phone, go and talk to people, have coffees, let people know on your LinkedIn you're looking for work, talk about the things you do really well. Don't go falling into this trap, which I feel like right now, because the job market is so soft, is people are hoping that the automation features of all these tools are going to find the job for them. It's just not the reality. People still get hired because of connections, particularly in this country. People get hired because you stand out. So I would make one recommendation to anyone: never use an AI writer for your CV, and especially for your cover letter, which is the first thing that an AI checker goes through.
But don't be afraid to mention that you're using AI.
But
that
you use it.
That you know
absolutely
about it,
how you use it. Yeah, you use it. But that's a
yeah.
very different than something so important.
Yeah.
Like putting your best foot forward for a job.
Yeah.
I mean, that's job should be one of the most planned, strategic things you ever do in your life. Like, you should never willy-nilly go into a job, unless you're literally a graduate and you're looking for hospitality or something to fill the time. And if you're planning a career, this should put all your effort. You should be out there asking people for coffee, sitting down, talking to people, getting advice, seeking connections, asking for referrals, bolstering your LinkedIn with people's, things that you can really showcase what you do. Get involved with organizations, attend meetings, go to events. It's a long way away from AI. And I think this is it, where people pick and choose where you use it, but please don't use it for something as important as finding your next career step or protecting your next career. So it might feel like a contradiction. So on one hand saying, use AI, tell people you're using AI, but on the other hand, don't use it for this particular thing. But I do think there is a lot of people out there right now who will be listening who are either underemployed, so they've taken a job that actually is not their capabilities more than the job allows because they've had to take a job any job, which is really unfortunate, or people who either really want to leave their job, it's not the right job for them, or are sitting in the job market looking. All of those need to understand that this world has shifted so significantly and actually play to your advantage, but don't use AI to present who you are.
And also, if you're thinking about the people who want to change their careers, so you might be in a job and you want to change your job, but you could be someone who've just come out of maternity leave and you've been away from the market for a whole year. We've just talked about the amount of work and craziness that's happening and changing in AI in 5 weeks. If you're away for a whole year...
In fact, I heard this week the average maternity leave in New Zealand for a woman is 7 years.
Oh, wow.
7 years, which absolutely blew my mind.
I mean, it could be 7 years. I mean,
I know what you're saying, but isn't it amazing? You mentioned 7 years. Yeah.
We could all be in Mars and you'll be by yourself on Earth.
Yeah, so if you've been out for a year, even if you took a sabbatical for a year, you went traveling for a year right now, you would definitely feel it. Like you would feel like you've just come back into a different era.
If I go away on holiday and come back, I'll feel like the world has changed. Or maybe taking care of someone in my family. Like if someone needs my support and I need to be with them and take time off work and then come back to work and feel like I need to catch up, especially if I'm someone who's maybe entrepreneurial, who wants to have a business, wants to start something, have an idea, and really want to be on top of things. Like I really want to be able to catch up. What are some of the ways that people can do? I mean, I know that at AcademyEx that you guys do some courses, perhaps, and this is one of them as well, of course. What else can people do to
stay relevant
from such a big, massive gap?
Yeah, look, wherever I go now, like if I'm a fly on the wall, if I'm I'm in a bus stop, or I'm sitting in a lobby of a business, or wherever I am. Wherever I go, I hear people talking about AI. Like it just feels like it's the conversation.
It so is,
And so, like if you're part of for example, you might have a group of antenatal friends who have all gone through and had babies similar time, and you get together for coffees every, a couple of weeks. Put that as a topic. Like actually, let's all spend some time thinking about AI. Let's all use different tools. Let's regather and talk about what we're using and how we use it. And look, even to the point you might bring your laptop along and actually say, okay, we're going to have an hour of kind of catch up, and then we're going to have an hour of study together and actually kind of learning together. And then we're going to compare and we're going to be on this journey together. You might do it with your family. You might be that you've got younger people in your lives who are really proficient. So you might say, okay, we're going to spend an hour every Sunday kind of going through and you show me a few things that you can do, and let me see what I can do alongside you. And if you're a young person and you've got that capacity, offer it to. It might be your parents, or it might be your auntie, your uncle, it might be whoever it is that is maybe just needs a bit of a nudge to do that. But again, it comes back to experimentation. I think because there is no friction, there is no cost apart from having a Wi-Fi connection, that is it, or a 5G connection, then there's really nothing that can go wrong. You're not having to invest. You're not having, there's really only a time and then probably an open mind and a growth mindset saying, well, I can do this. If anyone can do it, I can do it. And, I often say to people, the one thing that gets me is I say to people who often in their 40s will say, and I'm too old to do that. And I'm looking at them like, really? Are you sure that's the decision you want to make, 30, 40 years into, with a career ahead of you?
Yeah.
Like this is a long way ahead, and this is not like other technologies because it's the speed of what it's changing. But if you look back over the last 10 or 20 years, it wasn't that long ago. I mean, my career started with floppy disks and zip disks, fax machines, typewriters.
None of it is there anymore.
None of which exists today. And I think that, that we do forget how adaptive we really are as people. It's just, I think people are more confronted by this because it's moving so quickly, and there is this feeling if I don't jump on right now. And of course, the sooner you jump on, the easier it will be, no doubt. But it's not like people are 10 years into this. Like if you go back 3 years ago, in fact, if you even went 1 year ago, the vast majority of people still were not using AI on a daily basis.
Yeah. I mean,
so it's only the last year that it's become a daily tool for the majority.
And by the way, the one more thing that I forgot to mention about what's changed in the last 5 weeks, perhaps, this because there's so much to talk about, but I wasn't able to get an AI agent to build a website for me using AI. This has just happened in the last 5 weeks.
It's amazing, isn't it? And that's so good.
And like developing an app. You can develop an app through multiple websites. One of it's called Lovable. Now there's one Base 44. So it's...
And Lovable's the fastest growing company who went from 0 to $1 billion ever.
Yeah,
like
in 8 months or something.
These companies are coming from nowhere, and and that's just it. I mean, we again, nobody ever became a $1 billion company in a matter of months ever before.
Yeah.
And so this is why numbers always fascinate me, because if you were to map all these changes and how fast things are growing and the money where we started,
the graphs are always like a little soft, and then
we have hockey stick. The hockey sticks are everywhere. They're everywhere. Yeah, absolutely.
I love that.
It's a kind of a crazy time.
And so we can talk for hours, but I am aware of time, so we could always have you back.
Of course.
But how do everyday New Zealanders could protect themselves and arm themselves as a final piece of advice that you could have for them? And even if they are feeling the fear and feeling so overwhelmed right now, what one last thing that you would want to say to those people as a closer?
I'm going to do 2 things, and these are 2 very personal because they both relate to the work I do. So again, I just talked before, I'm running a micro-credential at the moment on disruptive technologies in AI. The average age and the median age is 50. So across 190 people. So if you think about that, so this is people who perhaps never imagined that they would ever be in their career learning about AI. So I think age is definitely not a hindrance. Absolutely not. So I think people have to understand that it's not a case of I'm too old, because at 50 you have a lot of career ahead of you. So don't put age in the way, and no matter what age you are, you're definitely still young enough to do this. The other one would be, we run a Master of Technological Futures designed for working professionals. And we have currently at our 27th generation, so that's 27 intakes over the last 10 years, and about to start our 28th Gen 28, next month. The people on that, you roughly get 30 people together who come together from all over the world, and they look at the technologies that are disrupting workplaces, and not just AI. Every possible way of looking at it. And this is for non-technical people. This is for business people who are trying to understand the future and to create value, to create worth and impact into the future. And the reason I mention that is when you go back into formal learning, you become part of a cohort. A cohort of 30 people who are just like you, who are all trying to navigate difficult kind of terrain and things that are changing really quickly, is the most empowering thing you could do as an adult. Because typically the people you spend your most amount of time with are not necessarily extending your knowledge, because the happy comfort place, it's like macaroni and cheese on a Friday night. You eat your comfort food or your pizza or whatever it might be because it's comfortable. So the people we surround ourselves are because we're comfortable with them. But actually what we need is to be around people who perhaps there's a little bit of discomfort because they're asking things or talking about things you don't understand, which means you have to think. And you have to kind of keep firing up the neurons again, and you have to start thinking about what does this mean, and what's my opinion on this, and how would I use this, and what can I do about it? And actually that gives people an immense amount of confidence, because the second their brain starts to fire up again, the neurons start to they activate, the confidence that brings to do other things. And I think one of the things I really focus on when people get sort of over 40 is they lose their confidence and their ability to keep learning. Once they start, it's really powerful, because no one ever says at the end of, a study going, well, I wish I didn't do that. They just feel like, I want to do more of that. And I think that's so, it is definitely a plug for that particular program, the Master of Technological Futures. But look, any formal learning, if it's cohort-based, don't do it online by yourself.
Yeah. I think the key here is that you have a collection of people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who you do it with. I think the accountability, I've been speaking to someone who's been doing that, have done the Masters, and I think she raved about the people who've done the course as equally as raving about the course itself.
Look, I think the people are even more important.
Yeah, she really loved being around the great minds.
Yeah, and I think this is just it. I think we don't surround ourselves enough with hard conversations or interesting conversations. And
challenging too. Like, you need to be challenged.
It's like a dinner party when you go and you have like a really good conversation. You go to areas you've never talked about before. And I sat at dinner last night next to a fascinating geologist. And he was a Brazilian geologist, and I know nothing about geology. And I had the most fascinating conversation by sitting next to him at dinner.
Yeah.
And his stories about where he'd been and what he'd done. And I was like so grateful at the end of the night to have that connection and learn some things I knew nothing about. Yeah. And that's that feeling of like, okay, that was, just a great feeling and really enjoyable.
Let's be challenged is the key here. And if people want to find out more about the courses and find out more about you, want to reach out to you, ask you questions, get advice, I don't know. Tell me, how can they do that?
Easiest way is just to email me. And so AcademyEx, so just francis.valentine@academyex.com. And just to get the spelling right, it's got weird spelling.
How do you spell your name?
Francis is easy. It's the ES, the female version typically,
yes.
And then Valentine with an I in the middle of it, not an E. So, but I'm also on LinkedIn, so please reach out to me there, and I look forward to any communication.
Yeah, we'll have links in the show notes, and we'll definitely make that easier for people to access the Q3 business briefing. That was really fascinating. I think I really loved it myself. So if I love something, I like to share it to other people.
Yeah, let's share it. And also go to AcademyEx.com. So that's AcademyEx.com if you would want to know more about what we do with courses.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast again, Francis. It's been fascinating and enlightening, and I can't wait to have you back.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Mina.
Thank you.